But that will be on our dime, and we'll raise that money if we need to do that. So that's good news.
Thank you, Ollie. So it seems like one of the caveats was definitely met there. So I think we probably procedurally need 2 votes. One is to reallocate the $80,000, and then one would be for the RFP specific. So let's first see, is there a motion to reallocate the $80,000 from the capital plan?
I'll make a motion to reallocate.
Thank you, Ed. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Eric abstains, thank you. Okay, so moving forward, would anybody like to carefully craft the motion, or would you like me to try and someone can so move?
So good.
So Jason, just, the number we should have voted was 179,728.
Okay,
So not 180, just so
can you give me that
because
one more
we would-
time?
179,728.
Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
So I'll entertain a motion that the Silver Lake School Committee allocate $179,728 from the capital plan in order to pay for the lights that will be installed on Sierco Field. However, if the cost comes in under that, the excess funds will be returned to the capital plan funds.
Could I just make a suggestion? I don't know if somebody wants, if I could, I really think we can, one way or the other, come up with $272. So I think just the round number, there's always a little leeway, things don't come in an exact figure. So I think if we want to just stay with it, I'm a little nervous about such an unusual number.
I was just concerned if we voted more money than what the E&D added up to, then we'd be changing the amount that we voted. So should we make an amendment to cut one of the other lines by 200 and...
When we have budgets, in terms of the numbers we have, things aren't ever exact, Gordon. I mean, you've been on Halifax Finance forever. I mean, I think there's always a little
I'm
wiggle, something that's...
just concerned if we change the number of the 490,
Yeah.
878, that's all.
But I don't think we're voting the cuts, we're just voting the total amount of the total amount of the budget, and we're reallocating a certain amount of the budget to the lights. So we can say that we're reallocating 80,000.
Right. And these are the items that we're going to be moving.
Okay.
Yes. I think your motion was wonderful, if you don't mind just a round number. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
As long as we don't change that number. 'cause I
No,
don't
we're not
wanna
changing the
change
number.
total.
We're not changing the number.
all right. So,
It's construction, it's going to cost more than what we're talking about.
ladies and gentlemen, would anybody like to move on that suggestion?
I'll make a motion for it.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Thany you.
And I have a question.
Go ahead, Eric.
So my question now becomes process. Now that we've made this vote, so Christine, you will be putting out an RFP. Does she have the authority to then make the purchase? I think you were alluding to that earlier about, because the school is not paying for the installation, you're just buying equipment. So
Just buying the lights.
So it sounds like that process moves a little bit quicker.
Through the joint power group, it can move quicker, but I would need somebody's assistance with the specifications, and I have no,
Yeah, because we're gonna need to tell the specifications of the lights.
Right.
This is important, and I would love to meet you.
I believe that Ollie said at the last meeting that he'd be willing to come in and work with Karen and Christine on this process to make sure it's smooth and can integrate the public and the private aspect of this to make it.
But do we need to meet again to actually make the purchase, or do you have the authority to then move forward with
I
it?
have the capacity to do that.
And we haven't voted yet.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
if we vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
No. Sorry, this is my last thing. I have to be recused, so again, for people who haven't been here before, I'm involved with the football boosters. That's why I am, and I've been involved with the fundraising, so I'm recusing myself from the vote. So if anyone's wondering why I'm not participating in the vote, that's, sorry, go ahead.
We want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's. Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? All right. We have the money for the RFP for the lights. I'd like to commend the committee for the time they've invested into this. I'd like to commend the community for rallying around a cause that you believed in, showing what was important. And if you want to shake someone's hand on your way out today, I would recommend you shake Ollie's hand, because if it wasn't for his spirit and his dedication, it wouldn't have gone down the way it did if it wasn't for Ollie, and I already have a date with him to shake hands on opening night when those lights go on. Now, if you would like to leave at this point and not have to put up with the rest of the proceedings, you are more than welcome to go. I am going to give the floor over to Ollie one
I just
last time.
wanted to thank the school committee for at least listening, and I appreciate it. I know how difficult it is, and I hope that together, obviously, this wouldn't happen unless you guys decided to do it. So I hope that we can all come together as a community and put this thing together. It's really, it says a lot about us. So I'm really proud to be a part of this whole process with you and us. And now, the big thing is the hard work now begins. That's where it gets really hard is right now. So thank you so much for your time and for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't they want to stay?
Thank you.
No, apparently they took it.
Thank you.
My clothes out.
Just between us, I'd like to take another item out of order.
Exciting, all the information.
I'd like to move up our school district business report to the top of the agenda, so Christine can go over the closeout, because I know Chris has.
And Naviance it's incredible. I mean, it's incredibly powerful, and it's cool, but you don't get it until later. And that's probably only one part of the resources, but there is a heavy focus on electronic resources, technologies there. They summarize that counselors are overburdened, and that students are found to lack accurate information about costs of college and funding that's available to help them get through college. So the sort of, when we talked about it last time, I think the initial thought was, and I know I just kind of threw it on you guys, was, well, not everybody can afford to go to these big colleges or these expensive colleges, and I tend to agree with you, but they find in their study, or part of their study shows that they're, well, not this study, but other study I looked at, is that if you go to a private school, they have a lot more resources to give you than if you went to a state school. In fact, sometimes, what we found is that it's almost exactly the same. So, you know, the amount of money my kid got into UMass Amherst early to go to Fordham, which she got into, would have made it exactly the same amount of money to go. So I'm not saying that that's right in any case, but that, that the idea that it's not financially viable is that the information isn't very accurately conveyed to the students. So I guess at this time, I would just like to ask you guys to read this study. It's kind of a quick and easy read. It's not very technical, and they do cite all kinds of other references in it, which is the great part about it. They do the work for us. And then I'm sort of wondering if we might be able to come back around and talk about it as an agenda item, maybe at our next meeting. Because I do think it's time to reevaluate. And this is not a knock on any personnel here at all. They've been wonderful. I just think that maybe there are some systemic and sort of things that we might want to look at doing better for our students. Like, you know, is a guidance counselor overburdened? Should there be more adjustment counselors as opposed to guidance? Should the guidance counselor's role on discipline, and should they be doing scheduling? You know, I mean, I talk a lot about, you know, to my daughter's guidance counselor about, you know, are they going to get that class? Like, I don't know why I'm talking to her about that. Or, you know, I go to a SPED meeting and the guidance counselor is in the SPED meeting, which is really a nice resource, but like that splits their time even more. So I'm just kind of thinking it might be time to take a look at this. And I do have now a 10th grader. And interestingly enough, I actually did email my guidance counselor to ask her if my Naviance was still active for my graduated senior, because I want to start looking at it for my younger student, because they don't get it until their junior year. Yeah, you can have my password, I don't care.
Why, do you know why?
I don't know if it's the number of licenses.
There might
that-
be site licenses
Yeah.
involved.
I actually don't know, but if anybody, I mean, maybe if it's all right with you, if at some point, maybe you can have them make a generic Naviance password for the committee to
think
just
we-
go in and take a look at it. It's really, it does actually go to your students, so it,
Yeah, I don't believe you can do it. Yeah.
yeah, are you in it?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. It actually
Yeah.
pre-populates your students' information.
Okay.
So the second they get their PSAT score, if they take one, it's populated in there, so you can see how that student ranks, and most people's PSAT to SAT score doesn't change dramatically. You can see where they, like if they pulled up University of Arizona, you would see where they would rank, in it. And you would also see every single student in Silver Lake that applied to University of Arizona, who got in, who didn't, and what their data were.
You don't
It's
see their
actually-
names though, do you?
They don't see names, you don't see names, they're just X's or dots.
Numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's an app too, right? Like I think my
there an
stepson,
app?
I feel like he had it on his phone and he was like looking up colleges just on his,
Yeah.
and anything that's on a phone, kids are gonna
Right.
interact
Yeah.
with, so.
But I was gonna, so the
very
question I
cool.
had earlier was, are the kids not applying to these top 31 colleges, or are they not getting in? Now, if I went into Naviance and sat down for hours, I could actually find that out myself, because I could pull every school and see and do the data, which I'm not going to do, although, you never know. I do have an analytical background, so, but it would be interesting, and that was only one question that sort of sparked my interest in this topic, but as I look into some of the research, I think that there could be some things that we could do better, without costing a lot of money.
I
or any
was wondering if
money.
your answers could be answered from an administrator's ID, just from technology experience, as a user in control of software sometimes,
Dashboard.
down
Yeah.
to everything versus college by college by college at
Yep.
the user end.
Well, I'm sure that the administrator for the account could probably do something like
Run a report,
pretty
top 10, last 10
easily,
years,
yeah.
whatever, yeah.
I definitely have forgotten how it breaks down. There is one counselor for the CTEP.
Yes.
One for CTE, and then one for 3 parts of the alphabet, three?
Right.
3 parts of the
Well,
alphabet.
we also have John Garofalo, our director, takes part of the alphabet also.
So there, yeah.
It's 3 point,
But they also do, I mean, they record your community service hours, they have job boards, I mean,
right. It's
don't
not
get me-
it's not just college,
no.
not even close.
But I also wonder if and I went to, and I'll stop in a second, but I went to the local college fair that we hold here. Not very well represented, gotta say. I mean, represented by sort of local colleges, maybe a college or two in Boston, but it's really not the robust college fair that you would like to see in terms of, that's like the number of schools, but the quality of schools it's kind of at the mid to lower end. There's really and there's a really good one that they do in Boston every year, so it would be great to maybe not replicate that, but like maybe provide a bus to take kids there,
There's a big one over at Stonewall.
yeah, or something like
It's
that.
very big over at Stonewall, so
So-
that might be why.
Right. And I think, a lot, I love all your ideas.
Yeah.
And your enthusiasm, and I think many of the issues that you're addressing go back to the budget, which, has been something we've really struggled with. And every year,
Yeah.
as opposed to building upon it, we're having to cut.
Oh, I totally understand
And
that,
so
but
I just, just so you know, I think it's, it is something, but you brought up some great points. I look forward to reading that study. And maybe at some point, we could invite John Garofalo to come in and do a presentation for us, the Director
Yeah.
of Guidance, so everybody could, I think that would be very worthwhile.
yeah, I mean, I think there are some low-hanging fruits that won't cost anything that we could just maybe fix, like just give them the Naviance thing in 9th grade and have them start fiddling around with it. But I think there are other things that are longer term and may cost money, and I'm not
I suspect it is
suggesting that.
financial, though. I suspect it's site
Yeah, but-
licenses. So, again, most everything does have a cost.
Yep.
And the thing to remember too is, prior to Naviance, that was more of a workload on the guidance counselors. Naviance has taken a lot of that off.
Huge.
I mean, my older son, I don't think most of the things that we had to have done other than letters were
Right.
done through Naviance.
Absolutely.
Which was great.
Yep.
You need to remember, there is a lot of economically challenged families in this.
Yeah,
community.
and there are a lot of resources out there for these
I know,
economically
but-
challenged families that I don't think are very well conveyed.
The thing is, a lot of people might just not see college as a real.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think Leslie makes a great point.
Oh, yeah.
Some private colleges are well-funded, and
Yeah.
on a net basis,
Yeah.
it can be very, very close,
Well-
even if affordability is an issue
Yeah.
on the onset. You get in, oftentimes they'll find a way to.
But I think the other thing is those colleges aren't out here trying to recruit us either because, and they're not going to come here for a college.
To leave around 6:30 or so?
45, so yeah.
I don't want you to rush.
I think we're going to be done with the meeting by 6:30.
Ed, can you see okay? Can you see? Because I was gonna say, if you want to
Want to come over here with me?
Would anybody like to move the motion to take Christine out of order?
I've sat there before.
Second? Take it out of order. All those in favor of taking it out of order? Thank you very much. Christine,
Close out.
we have moved you up so Chris can be here for your important.
All right.
An audience of 2.
I'm glad that you chose to do this. Wonderful. In your package tonight, you have your blue sheets for the closeout financial. And it looks a little different. The cover sheet is just kind of a summary of what's happened during the year. And as you can see, we have made it through the year. That's a good thing. I just want to mention that the warrants that are being circulated tonight, there are 2 groups of warrants. There's one set that's for 2018 as we're closing out the year. It includes vendor warrants as well as payroll warrants. And then there are also FY19 warrants. The FY19 warrants, we have 2 groups of them. One is the health insurance, because we need to pay beginning of the month for the month. And the other one are other insurances that we have in our payment to Plymouth County Retirement. If we make those payments now, we get a significant discount on our premium. So we always try to pay those in that first warrants, and they're received by the entities early on, and we get the discount.
Christine, do you mind?
I can't hear you.
Oh,
They're funneling out slowly.
They're having a blast back there.
Anybody have their outside voice? Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was so riveting, you gotta hear it a second time. All right, so in all the warrants that were circulating tonight, there were 2 groups. From FY18, we have many, many warrants. There are 18 accounts payable warrants and 3 payroll warrants. And then for FY19, we have 2 vendor warrants and 1 payroll warrant. And the reason why we do have 2019 warrants tonight is that we have to pay our health insurance for the month, and then we pay some of our other insurances now at one lump sum because we get a significant discount. So it makes a difference for us. So that's why we pay our Plymouth County assessment and our property casualty and our workers' comp policies now. And then in addition, there is one form that looks a little different. It's a journal entry. What's happened this year is we have some refunds that have come into the operating budget from grants and revolving accounts that employ personnel. So they're refunding our budget for Medicare costs for those employees. So you'll see that's a warrant that's circulating for $26,000. And that's really just a journal entry, but our auditors would like to make sure that the school committee gets to see that because it's crossing between funds. So we want to make sure that you'll see that tonight. You'll see that it goes between LO5, which is our operating budget, with 2 grants, which is GO5, and then 3 revolving accounts that are RO5. Now, to get to the closeout. On the cover sheet of the closeout, which is just a summary of this year, on the second page, you'll see the final balance that we will ask the committee to return to our, the wording is that it's our revenue account, but it's ultimately will go to our excess and deficiency account. So we're returning right now $210,485.03. And during this year, we've had a variety of, with every budget, it's a really good guesstimate at the time you're doing it. So as we go through the year, there are all kinds of changes. So one of the things that I did want to bring to your attention is payroll. When we're in negotiation years, when I budget for increases, I budget them all in the teaching line, so I don't put it into those individual lines. So you'll see we have a surplus in our teaching line, and then there are deficits in some of the small individual lines, and that's why you'll see that happening. Another area you'll see that is in our substitute line. This year, we have a combined deficit of $145,000 in our deficit line. But some of those teachers are on leave without pay, so there is the surplus in the teaching line covers a portion of that. One of the next areas that was a concern for us this year is homeless transportation. This year, we have a combined deficit of $50,000 after we spend our full budget of $25,000. So we had some really significant items for this year, but later on, when we talk about the revenue side, I'm going to let you know that we did receive some revenues, some reimbursements for that, so that does help us. We have had some significant custodial overtime, $43,000, in addition to what was, I have an allotment of $43,000, we spent $96,000, so it was $53,000 higher. But as you know, we had some weather events this year, and not only were they in the winter time, they started at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, so we had a lot that happened during the year, and that's what we did to get through the year. The utility area, we had some concerns this year with our telephone account. I've talked many times about we've been transitioning our telephone account to a new system, and we should see great savings. The wonderful news is that on Monday, the phone system transitioned over to the new lines. But I don't know what that dollar savings looks like just yet, so I know the transition has happened, so that's the good news. So hopefully there'll be some savings next year, because I did not make any cuts to the telephone lines in anticipation of the savings, just because it was unpredictable. Our gas accounts, we also had some concerns with this year. We have a fixed rate contract, but that fixed rate contract includes we could go over by 20% during the year. And in January 5th of 2018, when we had a couple of really cold days, we exceeded that by a lot. And our contract, I haven't run into this before, we actually had to pay the going price for those therms of gas during that period of time. And that for us almost resulted in an additional month's worth of payments that was so significant. Our contract ends July 30th, and we have a new contract that includes all overages. So we should not have any other additional costs going forward. Let's see.
But I'm sorry.
Just so much going on.
The last thing you just said there about the gas account is, in the new contract, we fixed that, so.
Correct.
Okay.
We did have to pay a penny more per therm, but certainty is valuable to us, and that's what helps us with our budgeting. We can't budget without that. The other items I want to mention was some of the surpluses, and those are in our insurance areas. One of the areas is Medicare. We receive the reimbursement from Rents and Revolving, so we do have a surplus there. And then our insurance accounts. And I know we've talked about our insurance accounts before. When we budget, I budget for who we have right now in place on our plans. I then add the percentage increase as estimated by Mayflower Municipal Health Group. And I do have a small allotment in case 3 or 4 people change from an individual to a family, or new people that decide to have insurance. This year we did it and ended up with a significant surplus in our insurance account. So that was able to get us through the rest of this year. And then I want to talk about the revenues. Our revenues, when we budgeted last year, is based on the best information that we had at the time. And we're using the governor's numbers from January when we do the estimates and when we do the assessments. Our revenues, I just looked again today to confirm up some of those late breaking items. Our revenues are about 100.
Fair, because they're like, you're not going to be paying, you're paying 30% of our costs, so.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to offer such a huge.
Not 10 or 20. You're right. Yeah, it's hard to attract.
But like, there's the Commonwealth Compact, which I think is great, not well advertised here either. Go to a community college for 2 years, do well, you automatically get into a state 4-year school, same two. Like, there just isn't a lot, I mean, I just think there could be more things that could be conveyed, and whether it's website-based or what, but the presentations they give in the guidance department to the parents are very surface. They're not hugely detailed. So.
Dartmouth gave my son less than a third.
Yeah.
The private school my son is going to go to gave him 85%.
That's great.
So, that's going exactly with what you're talking about. Also, one thing, and unfortunately, the school he's going to wasn't on that advance, though. They got to look for their major that they want. So, I'm not slamming it, I just know that there's schools that aren't on the Common App don't necessarily show up on the training executive.
Thank you for
Thanks.
bringing that
I
up
appreciate you.
tonight. And if you
Listening to me.
send me that meta-analysis, I will send it out to the committee.
I will follow up on what Leslie said a couple times now in terms of institutional knowledge and having the guidance council Rockville come in. It might be wise to have similar sort of presentations from department heads, be it SPED or what have you.
So-
I know some of it, but
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
some of the institutional knowledge that's left is actually what prevented us from having more interaction with administrators and staff. So now that we have a little bit of a different flavor to the committee, we've already talked about having more of the student presentations and more of little, like, I guess, tutorials from different departments on what's going on.
I've gotten it before on the finance side, but
And we also, don't forget, we have the YouTube videos of all the presentations that have ever made to us that are, I watch every committee meeting at least twice after the fact. I watched all of Gordon's finance committee meetings for about 5 years.
Thank God you can't find Kingston's.
Is it just the PAC TV recordings?
I watch Kingston Selectmen meetings. But seriously, that archive does exist, it is there for our use, but I think we are moving more towards that. So thanks for bringing it up.
I have a quick statement on that, having been on school committee since like 2005, not this one, but elementary and this one. These meetings go on and on. I mean, these meetings can go on for 4 hours. John Creed did stop, and the principals often didn't even say anything, they just give a handout. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is the number of presentations have gone up in the past 3 years, I would say, but it was because we were pushing this on Joy for her goals. And one of the questions that I asked, and I can't remember what meeting it was, but I said, we're getting a lot of presentations, a lot, and I'm wondering if we, rather than doing them 4 times, can we do it, have one meeting a month, and those people who want to go see that presentation can, because they really do, I mean, they can really extend our meetings. I mean, we had a meeting last month, and granted, a lot of that was lights, but we often have meetings that go on for 4 hours.
Mike, who, I know you haven't been renominated yet, who is the chair of Union 31,
Yeah,
had mentioned, because he was a big part of the rescheduling to
Yeah.
try and make our administrative time more efficiently used, of having the Union 31 meetings have those presentations
Yeah.
there.
I agree, I think that would be great.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like we're all having little bursts of thoughts that are running parallel to one another. So it's good to say it out loud so we can see if we're on the same page.
But I also do wonder, like, for the new folks, like the new newbies, like the 3 of us, if we could get some briefings from some folks that don't happen at a meeting, that just, like, I wouldn't mind, after the elections happen in May, like, I'll take a half a day and come to the school, and you just come on in and just tell me about SPED, tell me about whatever, just tell, I don't mind, or, because I asked, like, Michaela if I could come to school one day, because there's parts of school I've never seen, like, I've never been in CTE, so I'm like, she said, you can come for step-up day, which was super nice it didn't work for me for my schedule, but that would have been great, just to see, like, I've never been in this library when it's actually functional. Well, actually, I stuffed caps and gowns, so maybe I have, but not really. I just think I feel like we should, the only way to help is to know, so.
I think that would be useful to do an orientation after, even if everyone's re-elected, the following year, to do a orientation, a walk around. I'd love to do a walk around of the school before it starts, just to see what the problem areas are.
And the middle
I thought
school.
that was great.
like-
You brought that up.
I got Christine in my speed dial for a few weeks from now.
Yeah.
So I'll take on putting together some sort of new member orientation idea. I don't know if it's going to be a physical packet, an electronic document, or a meeting that has certain agenda items, but I'll work on that.
It would be really cool to just make a website that said that we had the SPED presentation, here's the link to the YouTube thing that happened that time, so we're not going back through all the meeting agendas and just saying, because you can do at the second, you can copy out a YouTube link and just go, we said the SPED presentation this time, we talked about CTE from this point on, and just keep a running column of those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, even if you didn't clip it out, even if you just like had the YouTube video and just said start on hour 3, period, minute 2, I'd be like, okay, now I can learn about SPED.
Yep, interesting.
And one other thing that would be interesting would be if there's going to be a presentation done for all 4 school committees, if that was taped beforehand, so that the person didn't actually have to come to the meeting. They could record it previous.
So Joy, you could just videotape yourself, not go to the meetings.
If it was like an informational type of thing,
Yeah.
then doing a presentation that way and sending it out to us so that if that person comes in for our meeting, we've got the information and it's really just a question asking agenda time frame versus a 45-minute presentation.
All interesting ideas.
Aren't you glad you have us?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. It's much better than looking at empty seats. Okay, so we have some future meeting dates to remember. Our next school committee meeting will be at the middle school on September 13th, 2018. I will entertain a motion for us to adjourn to enter into a
3,000 greater than what I had budgeted. And that's a combination of between our net metering, our Chapter 70 money, we actually received a little less because of the charges for charter school, things like that. Our transportation was actually a little higher, so it almost offset the deficit from Chapter 70 money. We received homeless transportation reimbursement at about 33%, so that helped us. We received Medicare reimbursements for students that we are receiving services that we're paying for. And so in total, right now, it's $103,000 in revenues that we're receiving in excess of what I had budgeted. So between those two items, we're at about $313,000 that it appears right now that we would be returning to our A&D account. Are there any questions?
I think the way that you figure the budget and being a little bit more conservative in your estimation of our revenues wise, could you explain what would happen if you went the other way? What would happen at the end of the year if...
That could be devastating because that would mean that we couldn't support our budget. So once we had any information that would lead us in that direction, we'd have to decide to either freeze our budget or make cuts at that time. Because we cannot overspend our budget. Every year our budget is based on our estimates of revenue. If we find out that one of those is not coming in as expected, we would have to make an adjustment right away.
In last fiscal year, our budget was roughly $24.5 million. So to be over on revenue by about $100,000 is still percentage-wise pretty close to the budget.
I agree, it's pretty low.
But it's the healthy side to be on. I just wanted to reiterate for anyone who doesn't understand why we might end up with a little bit of money going into E&D, what the consequences would be if we were on the other side of that.
And without E&D, we don't have capital plan.
I was just going to, thank you. I was just going to ask if I could interrupt.
Hopefully have something to flow through at some point.
Right.
That 100 or so is cutting it pretty close technically.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's
What
one
did we put
accident.
into E&D last year? Do you remember?
I do. We were able to fund it back to, actually, it went up a little higher than it had been. So we were able to fully replenish it. We
Right.
won't be fully replenishing it this year because we're taking 490 out and right now putting about 313 in.
Yeah.
So it won't be up to quite where it is right now.
So last year, we had certified in there $1,296,000.
Is what our E&D was certified at.
And the previous year, it was certified at $1,144,000. So it seems like that about $100,000 is pretty consistent with Christine's figurings.
Jason, could you just reread this year's number again?
This was not this year's,
It's
this was certified July 1st.
296,
One,
1,296,000. That's correct.
Yeah. Yes. And again, we can't go over 5% of our
I
budget.
throw this down to Gordon just so we can see it.
Do you want to take a look?
Are there any
Yeah,
questions
are there any
for
questions
Christine?
on what I shared?
Christine, do you need a vote on the closeout?
that's the second.
Thank you.
Hold on, Mr. Creed. Just let me find out the answer to my question, then I'll address you.
I do believe we take a vote on the very end of this closeout. It says we recommend that you return that to our,
Mr. Creed?
I just can give you, I know you've been busy last few weeks, but there's an update from the state. They don't have a budget. They may not have a budget. And they have, the House and Senate are still arguing on their budgets. So it hasn't even gone to the conference committee yet. No. Once it goes to the conference committee and they decide, which they hope will be next week, then the governor has 15 days to review the budget, okay? But that gets us close to July 31st. And since this is an election year, the session closes July 31st, and the rumor is he's going to veto earmarks. Now, I doubt you people have any earmarks, but your towns do. And that can hurt you at the other end.
Thank you, Mr. Creed. I was going to let you give the legislative report, but you just did.
Well, I didn't know, this all happened today.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so Christine does need a vote on her closeout number.
and then there will be one more item after that also.
I move we vote on the closeout.
you need us to read the specific number into the minutes?
The last sentence.
That last, that.
Right there at the
yeah.
bottom, Ed, if you want to make the motion.
All right. Let's see. I make a motion that we recommend, very last line?
Yeah.
That the balance of $210,485.03 be closed out to the Silver Lake Regional School District revenue account.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thanks, Ed.
And then one last item at the very last page of your package. This is an account balance by function code. It's on a white sheet of paper. So through our budget, I mentioned we've had a series of surpluses and deficits. And one of the things we like to do at the end of the year is just transfer to cover all of those deficits. When our budget is voted, it's voted as that final number. But within these function codes, we like to make that balance. So I would ask that the committee allow us to make these transfers between the function codes. And if you, the first column are the balances of each function code, leaving us the balance of 210,000. And then the adjustment column is bringing everything to zero and using some of our surpluses to cover those deficits.
So can I ask you a quick question? So last time I had looked at, all these codes and saw there were quite a few ups and downs in places, and you explained why, which is great. So I think this is great to do something like this, but I'm wondering, does this mean that you might change your approach for the budget for some of these lines next year to make, because some of them were unavoidable, don't get me wrong, but some of them were over or under because they were under.
Right. When the budget's being developed, I am looking at prior years as well as year-to-date information. So I make the best choices I can at the time with the help of the staff and what we learn from the school committee. So definitely, going forward, if there's something there that I'm seeing that's inconsistent with what I've seen up to date, I would have to take a look at it to see, do I need to change my strategy? Is there something that has changed? And there is actually, like with our insurance accounts, we had some small deficits last year. The discounts that we receive are being decreased. So we're still getting the prepayment discount, but it's not 7%, now it's 3%.
Right.
But for us, it's still worth it because that's a significant amount of money, so we want to make sure we take advantage of that.
Sure.
So it definitely does. It's just, now it's probably, it's not going to be.
Executive session for the purpose of discussing safety and security, only to return to regular session for adjournment.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to move into the small room?
Absolutely.
19's budget, so maybe in 20's budget.
Okay.
So it can take a while to catch up.
Okay, fair enough.
But I do definitely look at that as a budget.
Any other questions?
Yeah, statement. Basically, these things end up being static for any business. Basically, they adjust up and down from year to year. So it's not like, oops, we didn't plan on that door getting destroyed.
Right, there are some, one of the areas, like with homeless transportation, one of the things I do is I take a 5-year history and make estimates based off of that. But what we've spent this year is just so significant until last year. I just can't imagine it's going to go backwards next year. But when I was budgeting for 2019, I had information through January or February, so it was a different picture back then. So we will have a deficit again this year, probably.
Entertain a motion to allow the transfers between the function codes.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
unanimous. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
And again, I can't begin to tell you what our office is like this time of year. Remember, Christine is closing out 5 budgets simultaneously. So she has put in extraordinary hours, and I personally would like to say that we could not survive if she was not as dedicated and professional as she is.
Thank you. We have an amazing team that.
There is an amazing team.
Christine, can I ask one, it's sort of a kind of an aside question. Is the new system helping you at all in this process?
There are some new ways there are some ways in the new system is incredibly helpful, like with the revenue estimates that with our old system, we wouldn't have been able to have an update balance as of today. So right now, we're up 103,000. I wouldn't have, the way the system worked, the postings, the way it managed itself, I wouldn't have been able to have a crystal clear picture right now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that we can take information from our system right to Excel. I don't have to create my own Excel spreadsheet. I can just download from the system. So there are things like that where it makes it it's much more valuable than our prior system was.
Yeah, yeah, so that was certainly a worthwhile,
Oh, definitely,
yeah, okay,
yes.
good.
And we're seeing that savings with our Silver Lake budget, with Halifax, Kingston, Plimpton shared costs, so it's worked throughout.
Good, wonderful. I just had to ask that.
All right, so we're going to go back up to the top for the approval of the minutes. We have two separate minutes in front of us. We have the one from Thursday, June 14th. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Any questions or revisions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
June 14th?
Just June 14th, yep.
Eric is here,
No. Oh, on the June 14th, yes. But June 28th, I was not. Oh, it actually says that I was here.
We want to make
Okay,
sure
so we
that,
can correct that.
for the record, for everything, right?
But yeah, I wasn't here.
But we're not there yet, right?
We're not there yet.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about the 14th? All those in favor of approval? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? All right. Let's move on to Thursday, June 28th minutes. Any comments or amendments? We need to take Eric out?
Yes.
Take them out.
I was at Bentley University during that meeting.
Any other amendments or changes to June 28th minutes? All right. So I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes with the revision taking Eric out of the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstentions?
I wasn't here.
2 abstentions? Did you abstain or did you vote yes?
I voted yes.
Yeah, you can under parliamentary procedure. Good. All right. Moving on to our reports of special committees. The SLEA is not present tonight. Admin review, no meeting. Career and technical education, no meeting either. Chairman's report, I'm going to hold on my chairman's report.
May I just?
Go ahead.
I did just want to say that it is official.
Oh, the glass building.
The glass building. So we have received the full grant for our greenhouse from the state. So it is official now, so I can officially say it. So it's over $400,000, and I really want to recognize and thank Elliot for all the work he did to secure that grant. And that is now no longer needed to be part of our capital plan. That's awesome.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
And again, it was a pun, but in all due respect, there were several people who suggested we call that the glass
Glass house.
building for putting the amount of work
Yep.
and effort into it that Elliot put into it.
Absolutely.
Over 2 years of time he
Yeah.
dedicated to that.
Absolutely.
But it definitely paid off for the district. So thank you for sharing that. Legislative agents report. Well, Mr. Creed brought you up to speed on the state budget better than I could. I was at a resolution committee meeting for MASC on Tuesday night, where we voted on the resolutions we're going to bring forth to the full membership in November. So I just wanted to let you know what some of them were, so you can start thinking about your positions on these to inform whoever we send down to the delegate assembly, so they can go into that vote understanding what Silver Lake feels. So one of them was rejecting the arming of educators, and the resolution says the Massachusetts Association of School Committee rejects the notion of providing firearms to any educators. The safest environment would be to provide additional mental health resources and violent prevention programs in public schools. There was some wordsmithing. The actual resolutions need to be approved by the board of directors. That was last night. I didn't attend that meeting, so I don't know exactly which ones are going forward. When they become public, I'll bring them forth to the committee. One of them was asking that any schools, whether they're private or religious, if they accept any public funds in any way, federal or state, have to abide by the same accountability standards, including the same as annual assessments of student proficiency required of public schools. There was one about reproductive health education. The resolution states that the Massachusetts Association of School Committee urges the Massachusetts legislature to support evidence-based reproductive health curriculums. We further call on the Massachusetts congressional delegation to demand that the U.S. Department of Education and executive branch stop their support of abstinence-only education. We also had a resolution about transgender students who participate in athletics. And this was to help file legislation that would have the effect of protecting LGBTQ students from discrimination, harassment, and bullying. By that, schools should treat students based on their gender identity, protecting their privacy, providing access to gender-neutral restrooms, locker rooms, and private stall showers, and using their preferred pronouns, embedding sensitivity training into professional development, and providing uniform accommodations. There was one on sports wagering, and this one I actually voted against. The Massachusetts Association School Committee urges the General Court to enact legislation to legalize wagering on sporting events, and that the General Court, in its wisdom, commit revenues generated from sports wagering to the provision of social services, healthcare, and public education to the citizens of the Commonwealth. I was defeated in my opposition, by the way.
But not wagering on high school sports, right?
No wagering on high school sports. Regional school transportation, one that's been very close to this committee's heart. The resolution states, to promote greater competition for bus service contracts, the legislature should eliminate MGL Chapter 71, subsection 7C, and authorize a deeper analysis of the lack of bidders on school transportation contracts. If you've been paying attention, the executive branch has called for the Department of Education to be dissolved and to be absorbed into the Department of Labor. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees would like to work with the federal delegation to reject any notion of combining the U.S. Department of Education with any other government departments. This one is about IEPs. MASC urges the legislature to establish state law requirements that parents and students be provided of a copy via email or mail of all the assessments in the family's preferred language that are performed for a student's IEP evaluation at least 5 days prior to any meeting at which parents and students will review the proposed IEP.
Can I ask you, so
Yes.
what happens right now? Is the information not provided? Can you not request it, or?
So, according to the Parents' Right document, what would the course of action
Could
be?
you read that one more time? I'm sorry.
MASC urges the legislature to establish in state law a requirement that parents and students be provided with a copy via email or mail of all the assessments in the family's preferred language that are performed for the students at least 5 days prior to any meeting at which parents and students will review a proposed IEP.
So I believe what happens is that at the meeting, the results are given, but I don't believe they are mailed out 5 days beforehand, all the assessment results.
That is absolutely what happens.
Yeah. So
Haven't gone through it.
I believe that's what this is
So is
about.
it just the results are given and not a copy of the assessment?
They aren't mailed out 5 days prior to the meeting. So when you're having a review of a student's IEP, you do new testing.
Okay.
And so I believe what this is after is that those test results are mailed out to the family, either by email or hard copy, 5 days prior to the meeting.
The meeting with the parents at the
Yes,
school?
yes, to actually sign the IEP.
Typically, what happens is when you walk into your team meeting, that's when you see the results for the first time.
Right.
And you're also asked to act on the results.
Right.
So you don't get a chance to.
You
look
don't
at
have time to process
them. If you're
what the
smart
results are.
enough, you ask for them ahead of time,
Right.
but they're not required.
Right.
But currently, they would be provided only in English as part of the
No,
change?
no, they would be provided in the language of the family. It's the idea of the 5 days prior to the meeting.
Okay,
To
so that's the
Leslie's
change,
point.
the 5 days, not offering in the preferred
Right.
language.
And it isn't that if a parent asked for them, they would be mailed, but if a parent didn't know to ask, it's a lot of information to process at once, I think is the point.
We're not a very good representation of the average citizen of the Commonwealth by the fact that we're on this committee.
Right.
And this would provide for all individuals who have children, who have some sort of academic disability, to receive this information, hopefully in a language that they can understand
Yeah.
and digest before they show up at that meeting to make these very crucial decisions in the
Right.
growth of their child.
So can we set a policy as Silver Lake to offer emailing or mailing and not have to have a state law to do that?
I think we can supersede anything we want to supersede when it comes to state laws.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the experience is that if you have a child that has these whatever issues potentially, I mean, you have to all of a sudden become an expert in it. And don't get me wrong, you get the procedural safeguard document,
Yep.
but you have to either educate yourself or hire an advocate. You just don't know all these things. So,
Those 5 days gives them a chance to,
but I like your idea.
gives them a chance to consult with counsel.
So do we want to make a motion to?
No, that would be a policy change, so that's not
It would
something
have
that's
to come through
appropriate
the
for this
subcommittee,
committee.
right.
Right, and also, it would be something that we would definitely want to have some conversations with our special ed director.
So could we refer to that committee for, look at it?
I think that would be absolutely,
So do I need to make a motion to do that, to refer it to the subcommittee, or is that just something?
I don't think you need to make a motion amongst us to bring that to the policy subcommittee.
Okay.
Okay, but so noted for the record. All right. We also had a draft resolution on small and rural districts. So the MASC wants to make sure that the legislation is not enacted that would undermine the right of any city, town, or regional district to have imposed on it mandates that restructure, expand, regionalize, or dissolve into school districts without consent. So we have some pretty unique situations going on in Western Massachusetts right now, where the state is actually creating these education empowerment zones, and it's taking away local control. School committee members have no say over how their town's funds are being allocated towards education. That resolution right there is a direct retaliatory strike to that practice that's being encouraged. It's also happening down in New Bedford as well. Some towns have actually requested, this is sort of a voluntary receivership in some ways of the state DESE coming in and restructuring some things. But to have it happen in other towns where they didn't want it to occur is kind of troubling, and this is to head that off at the pass. So again, this is just some information about what's coming down the pipe. I didn't vote on this on behalf of us as a committee. I just voted as a member of MASC, which you're all members of, to bring these forward to the greater body. So again, the delegate assembly is in November. I've represented the committee for the past 4 or 5 years, and I definitely will take any feedback you give if you send me again or if someone else would like the opportunity. So, thank you. That's the end of my legislative agents report. Negotiation, employee relations, no meeting. PAC, no meeting. We don't have a representative. We can address that under reorganization. Policy, no
We'll have a
meeting.
meeting in the fall.
We'll have a meeting in the fall, and we can bring up Gordon's idea. Revolving funds,
No meeting,
we've already covered. SAFER, sleep study.
no meeting.
Treasurer's report.
Can I just back up to sleep study? So is there like a recent, like, summary of what went on with that? I kind of read about it as it was happening, but I don't know a lot
Pretty
about
much
it.
since I've been on the committee, it's been no meeting, I think. I feel like they really
know,
actually
like-
haven't met for a long time.
Yeah.
Actually, can I bring up
Go ahead.
a subject on that?
You can go back to that.
Yeah, we, over the past 10 years, we've done 3 separate studies. Basically, partially because of the way the school's set up, it's kind of infeasible for us to do anything. We know that eventually there's going to be legislation from up above from the state. Should we possibly consider kind of shelving the sleep study and just address it when people, and like show people that complain or ask about it, this is what we saw, we've done the due diligence, and it's not really feasible. at
Yeah,
this time.
the brain-based research is overwhelming.
Oh, yes, it is.
Supporting
Yes, it
later
is.
start times
Yeah.
for teenagers and adolescents. We did a survey,
We did.
fairly comprehensive survey that
Yeah.
had lots of response from all 3 communities. It was split perfectly down the middle. I know there's a blue ribbon commission for the MIAA that's looking into the effects of changing school start times on their sporting events, and also how that can affect the studies and the grades of students as well. But at the State House, there has been legislation brought to the floor a couple times, but never voted on, to change all high school and middle school starts times across the Commonwealth.
Oh, not elementary as well?
The elementaries in most cases, and there's a few different scenarios, would flip.
That's not good either.
That's what happens in Duxbury, right? Yeah.
Right. Right. So there are some communities that have taken it on their own and moved forward with it, but we didn't seem to have any direction from our communities of how they'd like us to proceed. So I don't know if we want to shelve it totally, or if we want to keep it there as a placeholder.
Maybe I missed- maybe I
Yeah, I think we leave it as a placeholder, and that's what we.
So we can move on it
I
with
didn't mean, I guess I shouldn't have said shelve it, put a placeholder.
We are a library.
Okay.
We might need
We
more
did, I
lights
thought
for
we
other
talked about
fields.
renaming the committee to school start time or something like that.
Yes,
Didn't we talk about renaming that subcommittee?
we did.
Would you like that to be noted? We can change it.
I feel like that more accurately
Yeah.
reflects what the
It
goal
does, yeah.
is to make sure that school start times make sense.
Is everybody in favor of that? Can
Yeah,
just
because we're
agree
not
to
doing a
that.
study
Yes.
anymore, right? And we're not studying.
No.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess is it an active committee or not?
I'd say it's not an active committee unless new information or new public participation occurs.
Okay.
So just to recap, so there was a study done that, when we looked at, we asked folks what they thought, 50-50 split, but that the scientific research clearly shows that later start times are better academically or for whatever reasons. So we just are choosing not to do anything?
No.
There was further implications
There's-
as well.
yeah,
That was
it's-
just the summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is-
If I can I'll do a 2-minute summary if that's okay. So the committee has met over the last several years.
Right.
We surveyed the entire community. It was almost an exact 50-50 split in terms of people's interest in
Right.
switching start times. For our district financially, we would have to flip buses because we use the same buses for
Right.
the elementary as the secondary. For the elementary, it has a huge impact on childcare. Also, again, we have 4 different unions. So for us, everything is more complex in terms of start times, changes, past practice. We hired MSBA, and they did a analysis of our bus contract and looked at the implications of what would happen if we were to change start times. All 4 committees voted to support that analysis. It was $8,000 that the committees voted to hire an outside firm to look at, not MSBA, I'm sorry.
NASBO.
Thank you. I got my acronym. I knew I was off, but I couldn't think of what it was. Too many acronyms, sorry. MASBO, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials. So we hired them to look at our transportation. We met with our bus company. We have looked at our pickups. Is there a way if we combine pickups, we could save some time? The athletic director was part of the committee. Part of what happens, and again, it isn't just sleep. Remember, if you're moving things later, that means after school, there isn't that study time for students. So they go right from the end of school to a game or right from the end of school to practice, where now they have some time and they are able to study. So there was some concern about students not being able to receive additional help because of that thing. What we also learned from other communities, like in Duxbury, is those students then come in early anyway for additional help. So you're defeating the purpose of changing start times, because if the students need help, they have to come in before school because they don't have after school time anymore. So it's a very complex problem. I'm not saying there aren't resolutions. We couldn't find them. We couldn't find them. The elementaries have absolutely no interest in flipping. They receive no benefit in their mind. So, you've got a district where we aren't just one district. We really are substantially 3 standalone elementaries plus the region. For us to have separate bus contracts, we looked at that, it would double the cost of our transportation. So we went every way we could think of. Ours is just a very complex, there isn't the money. It would be very difficult to justify it. So at some point, it may turn out that they will force us to, through legislation. I honestly don't think they will. I think it will go the way of seatbelts on buses. I mean, it comes up every few years, but nobody can afford to pay for it. So, and this would have a huge financial impact on us. So that's the history in a nutshell, if that helps. But we had a lot of committees, we had a tremendous number of meetings. We looked at it every way we could think of. We all know it would be better for the secondary kids if they could sleep later. How to get there was something we couldn't figure out.
The other thing, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, was we had looked at just moving everything, like I think 45 minutes or even
Yep.
a half an hour to an hour later, just shifting it that way. But there's so many,
Yeah, it's a domino.
because when we did the survey, we gave options. We said we
gave
could
options,
flip, we could just move everything. And then when Joy was talking about looking at the bus routes, the whole point of that, the goal was to pick up kids later, but still start at the same time.
Right.
So the kids would get a little more sleep because their bus pickup time would be later. But it just, in the end, it just really didn't work.
Yeah.
There were some efficiencies that they did look at, but it wasn't enough to really make an
So I'm just kind of
impact.
wondering, just for, this is obviously one issue, but there's probably others, is do we keep like an issue summary book? So like, that like, it sort of is additive in the sense that like, this is where we are, this is where we got to, and this is where this, because I mean, otherwise I'd have to dig through every single school committee discussion to find out where we are on an issue, and that just,
It's funny you bring this up. Jason and I had a conversation. In the past few years, we've lost a lot of historical knowledge from people moving off the committee. I had suggested to Jason, in my thought process was around the SAFER committee, in particular subcommittee. I almost thought besides like some sort of log, and SAFER sort of has the couple of different things, but I almost think, particularly with big projects like this, big topics, we should almost have some sort of action sheet, what's going on, and then very importantly, when something gets sort of closed out for a period of time, a closeout sheet, some sort of document that details the idea, the project, whatever it was, in a good amount of detail, so that 3 years from now, when sleep study comes up again, or 3 years from now, when something else comes up again, there's something the committee members can go back to. And I haven't refined it enough, but it was funny, we were just talking about this because we're losing too much intelligence, too much time goes by. You really need some, minutes are wonderful, but we need something, in my opinion.
we need like an activity log with a summary in it, just something, as a program manager, this is what we do all the time. It's like, because I could get hit by a bus or win the lottery tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to be managing that program anymore in either case, so.
I have every piece of paper that's been given me for the past 10 years.
Well, I have a lot of paper.
But I'm also wasting your time by asking you this question, where if I just had a log, I could go and read it.
No, but it's really, there really should be something we can go to look, next year when this topic comes up again, or, a lot of the things that go on with the CTE, we have a lot of big things that we anecdotally talk about, but we don't document.
Well, use the sleep thing as an example. We have done, the biggest one was the most recent one, but we have addressed it
When I was
3
on the
times.
elementary school, we were
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, Ellen Snow and bus.
Yeah.
I mean, that was about 11 years ago.
And that's kind of why I'm still on Kingston Elementary School Committee, because I left and then, and then Joe passed away, and then I'm like, I got to go back because we were doing a contract.
Right.
And I feel like I can't step away because that committee is totally turned over. But the same thing is kind of happening here. We've got a lot of new people here, which is great.
Yeah, it's like a succession document or something.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a calendar-based meeting agenda where we hit these items and just follow up like once a year?
That's not typically how it's been done, but it's an interesting idea.
So if we hit sleep study in the July meeting next year, to just follow up and see what's happening, if we had those types of follow-ups for these types of things, so that everyone's brought up to speed, one issue a month on what's, because the CTE, I'm brand new to that, so that was really interesting to watch at that last meeting and see the community come in and be involved in those teams that are happening. And I don't think I would have known that from just going to the meeting unless they were there. So if there was like a follow-up document to hit like one thing a month.
There's definitely a learning curve to coming onto the committee, and I think what you both are saying as two of the newest members, that we can supply some sort of education on where we've been and why we've either done what we did or we left it alone. There's also an aspect of it that I don't know if MASC has reached out to you yet for charting the course. Have you taken that?
No, I think when I came in the spring, they had a couple Saturdays and that was it.
Okay, so Mass Association of School Committees does run. Have you?
I took, I got an
He-
email.
yeah.
Okay. Does run a one-day workshop
Yep.
that really lays out where you are, what our roles and responsibilities are and things like that. And that can help kind of to guide your understanding of your role in the committee as
They
well.
only had 2 this spring, and they're both on Saturdays. So I'm looking for, I've actually asked them if they had an online version. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Saturday, all day.
All day.
All day.
Can't do it.
It was from 9 to about 3.
It's a.
But they don't have any more dates set up right now.
No, usually they'll wait until after the summer because they realize no one wants to give up their summer to do it, and they'll have a few in the fall. And I'll see
I'm just
if I
thinking
can.
just maybe like for this issue, just maybe like a one-pager, just almost like a brief. something.
What that comes down to though is that's our responsibility and
Yeah.
one of us has to step up and say, yeah, I'll draft that. So we need to take accountability amongst ourselves to create that. That's not something we can ask Lisa to do unless we
Oh, no,
increase her.
I'm not suggesting
But-
that. Whoever the chair is, or whoever the lead is, or maybe the second person in charge on the committee, I don't know.
The subcommittee.
On the subcommittee itself, yeah, but like, so for instance, like the light issue, like, someone posted like, oh, I remember being at meetings 3 years ago when they discussed this, and, for a lot of people here, and even me, it was like, it was new, and it's not new, as you
Not even
pointed out,
close.
not even close to being
Not even
new.
close.
So, but if there was sort of an issue paper on that particular topic under that particular committee, it'd be like, look, and you put it together, and it was great. It's like, how did we get here?
I would want to keep that to be an internal document though.
Fine, yep.
On all the different subjects.
Yeah.
But seriously, that's a huge undertaking, and we're responsible for it. So I'd be more than happy to start doing some brainstorming and taking any of your ideas offline directly to me, not CC'd to anybody else, and bring it back at our next school committee meeting, and we can maybe move forward with that. I think it's a great idea, I just think we need to work out the labor division to make sure that no one's being burdened by it too much.
We just need to ask Mark Guidaboni and Mr. Creed to do the documentation since they left. We need their
So
institutional
they're not
knowledge.
on the committee, but they are required
That's it.
participants in the background.
That's it.
Right.
So the other thing that would be very useful for would be negotiations to say what you were asking for and what what the other side was asking for and what you ultimately.
So I've been on that for elementary kids. What are we allowed to retain? And I have notes. Can we retain that and keep it not public, not make it public? For use within our committee, so that if I'm gone, at least my notes from the negotiations are, move on to the
I think
next
it would
one.
probably be a good conversation to have with Fred.
Yep, okay. Because that's a great point.
Because all those goals of every subcommittee should be noted someplace of what we were trying to accomplish and what was accomplished and the procedure to move forward.
Right.
That's why you're not allowed to leave the committee. It's kind of like once you're on.
I put on 8 years on the finance committee, so I understand.
All right, so I think we covered that topic fairly well. I appreciate the input and the ideas. Thank you, everyone. Ed, on to the treasurer's report.
Okay, treasurer's report. We have 24 total warrants. 3 of them are for the coming year, and 21 of them are combination closeouts for 18. Do 18 first. We have 18 regular and dated A warrants coming to $685,226.10. And we have 3 payrolls that add up to $2,579,454.59. That comes out to a total of $3,264,680.69. And the 2019 ones, there are 2 day-to-day and insurance warrants. They come up to $1,430,279.87. Then there is a 1 payroll for $74,289.16. Those ones total out to $1,504,569.03, and the grand total for all of them is $4,769,249.72. Remember, the payroll is large because of the summer lump sums, so.
Thank you very much, Ed. And Union 31, we had posted previously that there might be a meeting around August 1st, but we're not quite sure if that's going to be happening, so you might notice it's not on our important dates.
We just don't have the exact date.
Exactly, so I just wanted to bring everyone up to speed on that. All right, on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to try to do was to complete our reorganization.
Okay.
And I think we have a couple positions that aren't quite finished.
Right.
One of them is our PAC representative. That's an important position, and that does need to be voted by the committee, and then we send a letter to the executive director, Maureen Gahan.
Now, I know you said that you were interested in special ed, but I did not want to speak for you on this one because this is a huge...
Yeah, that's what I want to understand. I mean, I have a student in the SPED program, so, I mean, I've got the background, but, I mean, Laura has the background, too.
These meetings are during the day.
Yeah, I know, I just need to understand what the commitment is.
No, because it's all school committee
So
members.
the Pilgrim Miracle Lab, Mike actually represents it for the town of Plimpton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mike, do tell.
They meet once a month on the summer. And it's basically a school committee, just like this. So what we do here, they do there. The meetings typically don't last more than 2 hours. They do it right in Pembroke, It's a great group of people that are on it.
Yeah.
I came off it on because I just taken on this responsibility. I just don't have the time.
So I can speak to it as well. I served for both Silver Lake and Plimpton at various points. It was the most rewarding part of being a school committee member for me, to the point that I actually applied to be the executive director, and that's why I stepped down. They are our students. We send students who we can't meet the needs of here in district, and having a voice from our hometowns to speak into that process is extremely important. And those kids, going to the graduation in one of their programs down at Pilgrim Academy is life-changing. Just knowing what those kids have been through and seeing this program that we're part of, bringing those kids to the point that they get an actual Silver Lake diploma delivered to them is an amazing thing. I know Paula sat on the committee until she could no longer do so when they transitioned over to a board of directors and board of trustees for fiduciary reasons.
Discretionary trustee.
Right.
The funding, and I fill in where I get lost here, it's been a number of years, but the management of funds there, the committee members act in a role of discretionary trustee. And I went back and forth with Fred on this and a couple of others. You have a very discretionary role. You are responsible for the investment of the funds. If they are not invested well, if there's any fraudulent activity, etc., you as discretionary trustee, you have a higher fiduciary role than normal. In my prior life in financial services, I am extremely familiar with the role of discretionary trustee. I filled that role in my work life. At the time I was on the committee, quite frankly, I'm going to speak very candidly, the committee had difficulty meeting quorum. The committee had difficulty keeping members on the committee. I was uncomfortable being a discretionary trustee on a board that you couldn't even get the board to come together for meetings. I said, I am not interested in taking on that responsibility.
Right. And in the 3 years I served as a single and then a dual member, we never had a quorum issue. So that resolved itself, and we got a really good group in that Mike then inherited.
The year I was there, it was the same way.
And the funds were finally deposited into the prim account with the state.
Right, but you're,
Oh, I know you're still liable, but
yeah,
I don't worry.
you're the one making that decision.
Yeah, I don't worry about that at all.
Yeah, those documents are real interesting.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna leave it at that.
I think what I'm hearing, I don't mean to be selfish in a sense, I don't think I legally can take that role at PEC, because of what I do for a profession.
As a
Right, right.
What he does as a profession.
For work,
Oh.
my,
They wouldn't let you.
no, they would
Yeah.
not let me act in any
No,
discretionary fashion.
the chair of Plimpton who works for Fidelity can't do it because of his job obligation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I don't think I have the time.
That's fair.
I don't either.
Yeah, well, 4 of us on this committee serve on another school committee right now as well concurrently, so.
How much time do you think it's gonna take? So was there any discussion about being bonded by the district or somebody else? Or is it personal liability?
It's been too many years now. I don't know. I had concern about personal liability, but it's been a number of years since I've had these discussions.
We do have a bonded treasurer who works directly for the
The
board,
committee members aren't, are they?
but the committee members are not bonded.
Seems like a very complicated setup.
It is a complicated setup.
This is regarding their OPEB fund, correct? Your concern doesn't exist with anything else with the funding of the collaborative, right?
It's not just an
It's not
OPEB
just-
fund.
okay.
No, it has to do with retiree health benefits. And it's funds for people who retire, they can opt in to keep the insurance, and this fund is to fill that need. So it's beyond
But
OPEB.
it's separate than their day-to-day operations,
It is.
tuitions.
It absolutely is.
Looks like we need some thought on that one.
Yeah, I would need to dig into that a little bit more. I don't mind making a meeting a month and, doing some oversight and things like that, but the financial part of it kind of makes me nervous.
Fair
And I
enough.
also run my own company, so I don't want to be personally liable and have my company. I need to look into that.
So, is there any other subcommittee that you see? I've heard from most people.
What are
Any
the other
other
ones that
subcommittees?
need support?
We've got a couple on the back.
On the back?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Revolving fund?
Yep.
Well, for negotiations, I had on my list, let me know if this is what we're seeing, I had Gordon,
Yes.
I had Ed, I had Eric, and I still had Paula on negotiations. We've typically had one other person. Is anybody interested in?
It's a lot of fun.
And we do not have negotiations this year, just so
No.
you know, there's no contract, so it should
So
be.
this is the year to sign up.
Yeah, right, yeah,
So there probably wouldn't be any meetings
that
unless...
is correct. And-
But you get credit for being on a
Chris,
committee.
grab it.
I'm on a one-year term, so I can take it and see what happens after that. If I'm not elected, then I'm out. But I don't think it does any good. But if you do placeholder, I'll pop a placeholder, that's fine.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Just padding that.
Yeah, pick the easy one.
Yeah.
For
You can run
policy,
Moderator.
Need somebody else?
I have Paula, me, and Eric, and I have Ed as the alt if we needed him
For which one?
Policy.
for policy.
I mean, I'm happy to, I don't know, is everybody happy on that committee?
I have to go because I'm already on it for another town, so I
Right,
figure might
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, it's helpful to have people who have some background to move through it, and both Paula and
But
Eric.
anybody can
do.
go.
Yeah, anybody can go to it.
Yep.
It should be a light year. We did 116 last year.
That was fun.
I know I'm just the alternative, but I'd like to go to all those meetings.
Yeah, that's fine.
Make
Yep.
sure that you're
Yeah.
informed of all of them,
Yep.
absolutely. So, we are pretty filled with everything else. I do want to amend this to put Eric officially on SFFR, to make sure he's a member. Again, all of these subcommittee meetings are open to all. If we have more of a quorum at any subcommittee, no vote should be taken. Okay? If we have less than a quorum, you can take a vote, and then when you bring your report back to the committee, you don't need a second on a motion, according to Robert's rules.
So if you add Eric to that one, it's almost a committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's just you and
Well, wait a minute.
Can we send the
Gordon's on
extra
it.
people out and then take them?
no.
Okay.
All right. How about the revolving funds?
I'd stay on that one. I could just-
I would too. I just got on it. February.
Well, I'm happy to pick up Maureen's seat since she's not there.
All right,
I don't even know what
thank
this
you.
committee is, but I'm sure you guys will let me know. I bet I know what a revolving fund.
And Ed, sleep study, if we're going to shelve it, but we want to keep it on the books,
Yeah, I'm more than willing to do
just
so.
populate it.
Just, yeah.
And
But before we shelve it, we should write a summary of it.
Oh, no, I'll keep up on stuff. Remember, I'm in favor of doing it, but I also see that it's not realistic to do it with our situation. I'm in between on it.
So you need a second person.
It's not really an active committee, so I'm
So
not sure.
just Ed?
Yeah.
all right,
Committee of one.
Committee of one, you can talk to yourself.
it's like, so if we could just give some consideration to the Pilgrim Area Collaborative, I think by statute, they have to meet 6 times a year. So it's not as intense, but they have their own subcommittees, they have negotiations, policy, budget. It depends how deep you want to get in once you get in the door. There are some committee members who literally just show up for their 6 meetings, and that's it. All right. Anything else, Julie?
I just wanted to let you know new hires.
Great.
So just really quickly go through this. So we have a new carpentry teacher in our CTE program. His name is David McKenzie. Our new allied health program that we voted to bring in, I'm really excited to report. We have somebody I think is going to do a great job. Her name is Catherine Marini. We have a new art teacher, Jane Napolitano, a long-term art teacher retired, and that's Bree Becky. We've had a couple secretaries go out, very long-term secretaries. Karen Hayhurst, who's been with us over 30 years, retired, and Leslie Kalinowski will be filling that role. We lost our athletic secretary, Jen Hamill, and Casey Sheehan has filled in for that. We have a new special education teacher, William Trial. Catherine Pratt is no longer the interim 10-month position. If you remember, we appointed Michaela as the full, so Catherine Pratt is the official assistant principal. The new 18 to 22-year-old program, the transition program that we agreed to bring in, we have hired Laura Courage. We have a new Spanish teacher. Her name is Justine Murphy. We are starting the Bridge program, the Bridge for Resilient Youth. Dawn Nickerson, who had been our adjustment counselor, decided she would really like to be a part of that program, so she moved over there. So we had to replace our adjustment counselor, and that is Amanda Carr. Long-term, much-loved preschool teacher, Barbara Pimentel, announced her retirement. Very sad about that. And the woman who applied to take her job is Jacqueline Bizette. You may remember in May, she was the one who presented the CTE Early Childhood Program. So really excited about that. That's something that's in her field, and she's going to do a wonderful job for us. And at the middle school, Blake Chaffins, who had been our psychologist, decided that he would like to become our adjustment counselor at the middle school. He wanted to have more interactions with our students, so we're really excited about that. The psychologist, tends to do more of the testing and doesn't get as much time for interacting with the students and directly supporting the students. And we have hired a school psychologist to replace Blake, and that is Mary Kimball. The halftime adjustment counselor that we voted to support, we've been really busy, besides football lights, but to support the programs that we have at the middle school is Daniel White. We are in the process of hiring lots of Title I tutors. Ann Rudin, who had been up here for a year because we didn't have enough students at the life skills program at the middle school, is going back to the middle school for those students. We had a teacher who has long-term at Kingston Intermediate School. His name's Eric Todd. much loved KIS teacher. He has moved up to the middle school for our new STEM program there. And he's really excited about it. So he's going to do a fantastic job. Huge loss for KIS.
We may
but it-
preemptively bring him back.
Yes. But
posting.
he's awesome.
Go back,
He's a great guy, so we're really excited about that. Yeah, I know.
Get out of there?
Next
Yeah.
negotiation. we'll take care of
Yeah,
that.
he's a great guy. So we're really excited for the middle school, and we have a good replacement for him, but he will be missed. For the language-based classroom, if you remember, we had the program at the elementary. We are doing it up at the middle school because the students are graduating up. We've hired Brian Reardon. The math teacher, we had that math lab position. We had kept as a long-term sub because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to keep the program or not. Lynn Eagleson had filled in as our long-term sub for a couple years. We have officially hired her. David Leary, you met last month as our treasurer. So we've hired him. Food service director. So I really went around and around about what the right decision for the program was for the district. I really liked what Chartwell's presented, but I did have some concerns, and I had spoken to a lot of surrounding districts. It really is all about fit, and that is what everybody has said. And many surrounding districts went with a food service provider for a period of time and then switched back to a director for that sort of personalized service. We had really exceptional candidates this time, and I felt that considering the tight time crunch of getting the program up and running, working with the staff that we have, that our district will be better served by hiring one of our applicants. And we have hired Megan Aronholtz. She comes from Braintree, and she has successfully run a program that is twice the size of Silver Lake. It is 11 schools, over 6,000 kids, and she has maintained the budget so that her salary is taken out of the food service program. If you remember, we had to have the salary put back into our budget. I don't know that she's going to be able to do that immediately, but she has a proven success record. And she's long-term. She also originally came from Pembroke, when Pembroke was a part of us. So she's very familiar with our district. She just lives in Plymouth. She's really excited. She actually already knows some of our staff here. And again, she's gotten a proven success track record. So I'm hopeful. And I'm excited to welcome her to our staff. But I have to say, it really was a tough decision. I hope I made the right one.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I don't think those cranberry nut bars were very good last
Yeah,
night.
I didn't either. Actually, I agree. I agree, but the water was really welcome because we were out of water. But I have a great feeling about Megan. She's been very well received by the staff. She's got a great reputation. So I'm really hopeful. And she was really, it was kind of fun because she's really excited to try to figure out why we're not being more successful. So I'm hopeful.
If you want some real reassurance, I did some checking after our last meeting.
Okay.
Met them, and the issues that I found about their company as a whole, there's politics and criticisms and things happen, and I don't think we wanted to do business with that company because of
Some other stuff.
ethical reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
To all the staff members
So we're still.
who are departing,
Yes.
just like to wish them well. and Thank
Absolutely.
them for their service here, and welcome all the new members
Yep.
to the family.
Yep. So again, we have a few positions to still fill, but we worked really hard this past spring getting everybody through, and I think we've got some great new staff coming on board.
Great.
Question. That was a long list. What's the net difference of staff? Do we add a handful, or is it almost even?
That's a great question. So,
There'll be a lot of subs coming to full, which really is
right.
a wash. maybe.
In terms of new programs, the only thing that we've added are two things, and that is the allied health teacher
Yep.
and the bridge program. Those are the only two new positions. The rest were some shifting, and if you remember, it becomes a little bit of a shell game, and I don't mean that in any sort of a bad way, but
Yeah.
you have this position go, that position isn't as much of a priority, so I'm going to fill it with this position and that. So it's a bit of a juggle. Overall, we're a +2.
Okay, I was just trying to keep track of my head, but I lost it.
Yeah,
Come on.
I do that on pretty much a daily basis.
Yes.
And don't forget that the allied health health teacher is partially covered by the Perkins grant.
Absolutely.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. And we're really excited about it. She actually wrote a book that she gave me when I hired her, so, yes, so she's, I'm pretty excited, I actually haven't had a chance to read it.
Sorry, is there budgetary savings with that many people changing, or is it a?
It was, if you remember, we took it out.
Yeah,
So we took out some of the savings. And
Yeah.
again, there's always some changes that are unexpected at the end of the year. People decide they're going to retire. But then some people that come in, we put in a number that we think is a good number for a hire. And sometimes we can't find anybody qualified that meets that number. So there's going to be a little bit up here and a little bit lower here. And it's Christine and I spend a lot of quality time together figuring it out. Luckily, we really like
That's
each
why we
other, right,
have you, too.
Christine?
Thank you.
Christine and I really like each other. So-
And sometimes we give that bachelor step 1 teacher the shot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, it is definitely an up and down. I mean, I literally have like, this one costs this one I put in this amount, and so this one, you have a little more here, but you lost it here, and so,
good, thank you.
yeah. But the good news is we always get to the finish line correctly.
Any other questions for Joy? Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
All right, on to new business.
I know it's summertime, everybody wants to go home, so I'll make it brief. But last, do you remember, and I hate to do this, because it's always the end of the meeting when we get to new business, but such as it is. So do you remember last meeting I talked to you a little about guidance, and I was a little concerned about college acceptances and kind of brought it up, and it was after a very long meeting last time, 4.5 hours, so I didn't expect any action or anything last time, I just wanted to kind of raise it. So I did go back and talk to Mr. Garofalo a little bit about what we saw this year, and I got a little bit of feedback from him. Essentially, he was super nice to respond, which is great. And his summary was, it was a quote tough year, and that it was not our best. So that's great. It happens. I'm okay with ups and downs and years and acceptances, but I started to look into it a little bit because it's not really just about my experience, it's about some experience I've seen other folks have, and my kid's going to a great school, I'm not worried about it. She's perfectly happy where she's going, so it's all good. But I did notice in some of my experience that some of the guidance services feel like they were very stretched thin over the course of the 4 years that I have one here now, one just graduated. And such to the fact that since she wasn't or didn't have any issues or disciplinary or any other issues, she essentially never really met her guidance counselor until well into her junior year when she started the college process. So, it is what it is, and she had a great relationship with her, and it worked out really well for her, and that's great. But I've also heard some other feedback from some of the CTE parents that they essentially don't feel that guidance is supporting them college-wise. In fact, some of them are being told directly, we don't do college counseling for CTE students. Whether that's true or not, don't know, but that's what I've heard from a number of parents directly. And they call CTE guidance and say, I want to talk to them about my kid going to a 4-year school. They're like, oh, we don't advise on that. And I don't know whether it's true or not, but that's the experience that people are having. So I started looking into it just a little bit in terms of what is the research out there on guidance counselors, because it's the role has changed quite a bit. And there's a report that was done by the American School Counselors Association, written by the College Board Research R&D group. And they actually did a survey of the research. They did a review of the actual research on the roles of high school guidance counselors. And so they looked at all the research that was out there on guidance counselors and kind of brought it together in one document. And I actually emailed it to Lisa earlier today because my printer didn't have enough ink in it to manage it at home. So maybe if it's okay, we
I
can...
did not print it out because
Totally
I
fine.
was gone by the
Yeah, I
time
figured.
you sent it to me.
So through the chair, I can send it, or Lisa can send it as a piece of material for future just to look at. So it's a really interesting 10-page read, because everybody likes to read before they go to bed. And it's an interesting read because it actually does kind of the work for us. It takes all the research out there on the role of guidance counselors and distills it, and it looks at some of the research that still needs to be done, but also some of the conclusions that they found. And so I think it's just worth going through a couple of them, not in detail, but just some of the things they found. Because I really do think that maybe we need to think about what the role is and when the intervention starts in our school, because it doesn't start generally in terms of college and career planning until pretty late in the process. So what they suggested was that the research shows that that the roles of school counselors are sort of overlooked. Like, how many roles have they taken on? And that at one time, high school counselors were pretty much college and or career counselors. They didn't do that was sort of their focus. And over time, their role is broadened considerably. I'm not telling you something you don't know especially, but, you know, they're now doing registration and scheduling of classes, you know, they're doing SPED IEP reps, they are doing crisis counseling, discipline counseling, test administration, other administration, and then on top of that, they have to do their college stuff. And with a student body, well, like this year's graduating class was 330. It's a big one, don't get me wrong, but it's a huge one, and the numbers are going down a bit, but if you break it down, there's essentially a CTE guidance counselor, 3 regular guidance counselors, and they get broken up by last name. So you end up with almost 100 students, right? Is that probably about the right number?
A little less, but
80
yeah.
to 90
That's per grade, too.
per grade,
Right.
Right,
times 4.
right.
So this is what the research is sort of showing, and that essentially they also looked at the research that shows that pre-service education, so before guidance counselors come in to provide service to a school, the idea of college prep counseling is not emphasized. You know, they're sort of pushing them towards some of the other roles that they're having to fill now that they didn't fill a lot. So they're doing, granted, it's great, they're more capable of doing some of the other roles that are there. And that their effectiveness would be increased with a really more explicit definition of what their roles and duties are, as opposed to everything, which is not everything, but it's a lot. They looked at the impacts, the 4 top impacts that they saw, which was how the department is organized is really one key aspect to it, how early and ongoing the prep is, and they suggest in the research that it really should start in 9th grade, and it doesn't. That it should really look at how collaborative the culture is at the school, and this isn't, they focus on college, but I argue that it's not just college, it's also career prep, you know, it's kind of both. And then what resources are available. We're so heavily dependent now on electronic resources, and some of them are fantastic. Like, I don't know if you've ever been through Naviance, but I mean, it's
I don't, because my son's just finished his sophomore year, and they don't
give you
right,
access
I want
until
him
your junior.
this summer
Yes.
looking up colleges,
Yes.
and he's like, well, I don't have access to Naviance.
They don't give it to you till your junior year.
Yeah.
And they don't give it to you until after you go through the guidance section of that part of the junior year.
Right.
So, but if